For every hated Jujutsu Kaisen character, there's one who is loved by everyone. Starting with everyone's favorite, Satoru Gojo. Gojo Satoru doesn't follow the rules. Not because he's disobedient, but because the rules were never written for someone like him. He's the first sorcerer in 4 centuries to be born with both the 6 eyes and the limitless technique, a combination so rare it's practically divine. When he removed his blindfold for the first time in Shibuya, revealing those legendary 6 eyes, even his enemies knew. They were already dead. He's only 28, and yet, when the 1,000-year-old King of Curses, Sukuna, faced him in battle, backed by Mahoraga and Agito, Gojo smiled. But Gojo's strength isn't what makes him truly different. It's what he does with it. When the higher-ups ordered Yuji Itadori's execution, Gojo stepped in and made him his student. When Yuta Okotsu was consumed by Rika's curse, Gojo guided him back. And after Toji's death, he took in Megumi Fushiguro, not out of duty, but compassion. Because Gojo doesn't just want to be the strongest, he wants his students to be better than him. Because Gojo understands something most powerful people never learn. True strength isn't measured by who you can defeat. It's measured by who you can protect, and who you can lift higher than yourself. He's not just the strongest sorcerer, he's the best teacher they've ever had. However, while Gojo lifts other sorcerers, Kenjaku only uses them. He's worn more faces than anyone in Jujutsu Kaisen, and none of them were his own. He took over Itadori's mother, wore her like a costume, smiled with her face, spoke with her voice, and when he was done with her body, he moved on to the next. From adding himself to the cursed womb to claiming Suguru Geto's body. Kenjaku has lived 1,000 lives. It's clear Kenjaku sees people only as objects to be used, and that's why he's hated. And when he's done with you, he'll wear your body and smile with your face. Mahito thought Kenjaku was his ally, his mentor, someone who understood him. Kenjaku praised his growth, encouraged his experiments, watched him improve. And then, the moment Mahito reached his peak, Kenjaku consumed him. No hesitation, no remorse, just efficiency. Mahito wasn't a student, he was raised to be used by Kenjaku. And for the others like Jogo, whom he didn't consume, he was sorry, not for their deaths, but that he couldn't consume them on time. Where Gojo creates successors, Kenjaku creates victims. But his most wicked act? That was personal. Gojo Satoru, the strongest sorcerer alive, had only one true friend, Suguru Geto. And when Geto died, Gojo couldn't even burn the body. Kenjaku found it first. He crawled inside, wore Geto's face, mimicked his voice. And when Gojo finally saw him again, his best friend, walking, talking, smiling, his body froze. Just for a second. That's all Kenjaku needed. Kenjaku didn't just trap Gojo, he used his best friend's body to do it. When Kenjaku speaks, you never know whose voice you're hearing. Noritoshi Kamo, Kaori Itadori, or Suguru Geto. He's lived so many lives, he doesn't remember which voice is his anymore. Or maybe he never had one to begin with. He doesn't even have a real body anymore, only recognized by the scar across his victims' heads. It's like how Doma promises his followers salvation if only they let him eat them. Kenjaku manipulates, consumes. Gojo raised successors, Kenjaku raised vessels. And then there's Yuji Itadori, Kenjaku's son, biologically, genetically, literally his creation. But where Kenjaku only takes, Yuji gives everything. Where Kenjaku steals bodies, Yuji sacrifices his own to save others. And when he finds out that some curses are humans, he mourns. From sacrificing himself to save Megumi Fushiguro, it's pretty clear why Yuji is a loved character. It's the same empathy that makes Mahito hate him, and even Sukuna laugh at him when he loses his friend Junpei. But Yuji isn't just about empathy alone, because when he gets angry, you'd wish you'd never met him. And when Yuji faces Mahito in Shibuya, it's not just a fight, it's payback. Mahito sees humans as toys, things to break, reshape, throw away. And he's been breaking everything Yuji cares about. Nanami, the man who'd guided him, protected him, believed in him, dies in front of Yuji's eyes. Then Nobara. And Mahito, he's laughing, mocking Yuji's pain, celebrating each death like it's performance art. For the first time in his life, Yuji's empathy breaks. When Yuji finally lands that punch, it's not just power, it's grief. Every person Mahito killed, every life he destroyed. Yuji carries all of it, the weight, the pain, the fury, and unleashes it in a single moment. For the first time, the curse who loved breaking humans realizes he's about to be broken by the one human who refused to stop caring. Itadori's empathy has always been his greatest strength and his biggest weakness. It's what his enemies exploit most. Sukuna laughs at it, Mahito mocks it. When Gunpei is twisted into a curse, Yuji's kindness becomes the knife they stab him with. But after Shibuya, something changes. Yuji learns what Mark Grayson learned after the Invincible War, that sometimes, to protect the ones you love, you can't hesitate to hurt those who'd harm them. But while Yuji made it out of Shibuya, Mahito would not. Although a special grade and playful like Gojo Satoru, Mahito would never seek to make the next generation stronger. Instead, he'd tear it apart, piece by piece. From murdering Nobara to torment Yuji, to shredding Nanami in Shibuya, to twisting Gunpei into a cursed puppet, Mahito does everything possible to strip Yuji Itadori of hope. It's no surprise he partners with Kenjaku. One sees humans as vessels to achieve his plans, the other sees them as toys to break for fun. Beyond his dream of a world ruled by curses, Mahito's true goal is simpler. He wants to rip hope out of humanity. When Kokichi finally believes he's found a way to defeat Geto, Mahito appears and ends him. When Nanami, exhausted, bleeding, barely standing, thinks he's earned just one moment to breathe, Mahito appears behind him and tears him apart, slowly, making sure Yuji sees every second. Mahito doesn't just kill, he waits. He watches people find hope, grab onto it, believe in it, and then he rips it away. That's when he smiles the widest. And in the end, Mahito meets the same fate as the people he used, consumed. Mahito, who saw humans as toys, who consumed souls for fun, got consumed himself. By Kenjaku, the curse who loved breaking hope, died realizing he never had any to begin with. Yuji saved lives, Mahito collected them. But of the disaster curses, one stands out. Jogo, because everyone expected him to lose, and he almost didn't. See, most curses fear Satoru Gojo. The moment they face him, they feel it. That overwhelming presence, they know they're going to die. Hanami didn't last long either. But Jogo? He looked at the strongest sorcerer alive, and decided to fight anyway. Not because he thought he'd win, but because he was Jogo. And Jogo didn't back down. Even when Kenjaku told him the truth. You cannot defeat Sukuna. Jogo still fought him, but with everything he had, with the kind of pride only a curse can have. The kind that says, I'd rather burn fighting than live on my knees. And for a moment, just a moment, the King of Curses actually looked impressed, because Jogo didn't just survive. He stood his ground, against someone who'd never been challenged. Jogo's response wasn't to flee, it was to prove him wrong. Then came the Shibuya incident night. Against humans, he wasn't just strong, he was devastating. 3 of Jujutsu's finest, simultaneously, and he didn't break a sweat. Because Jogo didn't have an off switch, just relentless, overwhelming fire. And Jogo had no mercy for those beneath him, only respect for those above. Jogo is loved because he did what most curses can't. He fought the strongest and made it matter. He knew he couldn't beat Sukuna. He knew Gojo was stronger, that the odds were impossible, and he fought anyway. Because not fighting would have been a death of a different kind. He lost, but he lost fighting. And somehow, that's more than most people ever get to do. But the Kyoto school, they had every opportunity Jogo never had. Training, resources, recognition, a nation that believed in them. And when the real test came, they couldn't even show up. The Kyoto School of Jujutsu Sorcerers walked into the Goodwill event with something the Tokyo students didn't have. Confidence. The Kyoto school was better, stronger, more experienced. Mai crushed her sister Maki, effortlessly. Todo faced Megumi and didn't just win, he made it look easy. The message was clear. Kyoto wasn't just equal to Tokyo, Kyoto was better. For a moment, it seemed like the Kyoto school's arrogance was justified. Later, when the real battles began, when Jujutsu society faced its greatest threat, where was the Kyoto school? Nowhere. Easily overwhelmed, quickly forgotten. The team that had dominated their peers at a school competition couldn't even slow down the actual threats. Kenjaku didn't treat them as opponents. He treated them as obstacles, and obstacles don't matter. Todo showed up. He fought Mahito, made an impact, did what a sorcerer should do. Mechamaru found Gojo, contributed to the plan, played his part. But everyone else? Gone. Noritoshi Kamo had blood manipulation, the same technique as Choso. But while Choso fought at the heart of the conflict, Kamo was useful only once. The Kyoto school represents a harsh truth in Jujutsu Kaisen. Confidence without capability is just arrogance. They walked into that school competition as the expected victors. They walked out of the real war as afterthoughts, because they were outmatched by a world far more dangerous than school tournaments. The Goodwill event was their peak. Everything after was a decline, because when the world needed them most, they weren't there. But not all students disappoint. Some rise to meet expectations, and some exceed them. Maki Zenin was never supposed to exist. Born into one of the 3 great sorcerer clans, yet cursed with almost no cursed energy, the Zenin family saw her as worthless. But Maki didn't leave the Jujutsu world. She stayed. And she trained until her body became the weapon they said she'd never be. While others relied on inherited techniques and cursed energy, Maki relied on discipline, pain, and sheer refusal to quit. Maki's goal was simple: to live on her own terms, in a world that told her she had none. And when that same world took everything from her, when the Zenin clan betrayed her, killed her sister, and proved exactly how useless they thought she was, she erased them. In one day. Not with a cursed technique, or even her allies like Yuta, but with her bare hands. Because a system that survives by breaking people like her deserved to burn. Where others profit from power, Maki takes it back, and that's why Maki Zenin is loved. Because she represents what happens when someone refuses to let the world tell them who they're allowed to be. But not everyone fights for strong values. Some only fight for one thing: money. Where Maki Zenin burned down the system that devalued her, Mei learned to make money from it. Meet Mei. She's beautiful, there's no argument there. Long white hair, confident walk, a presence that commands attention. But here's the thing about Mei, beauty doesn't save lives. It just sells them. Imagine you're cornered. A grade 2 curse has you trapped, your life hanging by a thread. Who do you call? Gojo Satoru. He'd arrive in moments, destroy the curse before it knows what hit it. Problem solved. Yuji Itadori? He'd bleed. He'd break. He'd throw his entire body at the curse until one of you walked away alive. Mei? She'd ask, "How much are you paying?" That's not an exaggeration. That's literally how Mei operates. She sees sorcery as a way to make money and nothing else. You want her strength? You pay. You want her help? You negotiate. You want her life? Good luck affording it. Mei doesn't care about friendship. Doesn't care about the Jujutsu Society's mission to protect humanity. She cares about one thing: money. She claims she doesn't understand relationships that aren't based on money. Friendships, love, loyalty. To her, these are concepts as foreign as a curse to a civilian. Everything to her is about money. Strangely, she gets along with Gojo Satoru, the richest man in the room. The one person who can always afford her rates. It makes sense, doesn't it? They speak the same language, money. Gojo has money, Mei worships it. Mei isn't hated because she's weak. She's hated because of her love of money. Where Maki Zenin burned down the system that hated her, Mei learned how to charge it interest. Where Mei walks away from those who can't afford her, Nanami stands front and center for those who need him most. That's why Nanami was loved. You didn't have to convince him to save a life or pay him to show up for you, he just did. When Nanami walked into Shibuya, he knew the worst curses would be there. Jogo, Mahito, creatures that could destroy armies. He walked in anyway. When Haruta hurt Nobara, Nanami's student, he didn't calculate. He responded with the kind of anger only a mentor can feel. Unlike Mei, who measures every relationship by its profitability, Nanami saw every person as someone worth saving. Gojo annoyed him, but he'd still help him. Yuji was Sukuna's vessel, but he'd still train him. That's why Nanami was loved. In a world where sorcerers fight for power, glory, or money, Nanami fought for one thing: people. But not everyone in Jujutsu Society shared his values. In fact, the people who should have supported him most actively worked against him. Meet the higher-ups of Jujutsu Society. When Yuta Okotsu arrived, a student drowning in curse energy, struggling to control the power inside him, the higher-ups had a simple solution: kill him. They don't have names, not really. They're old men in dark rooms. And they are the reason Jujutsu Kaisen nearly destroyed itself from the inside out. Gojo stepped in and saved Yuta. But the message was clear. To the higher-ups, potential threats aren't students. Then came Yuji Itadori. When Sukuna awakened inside him, the higher-ups knew exactly what to do. Execution. They didn't even try to study or control it, just death. Then Shibuya happened. Gojo was sealed away, trapped in the prison realm, isolated from the world. And the higher-ups, they made their move. They exiled Gojo from the Jujutsu world, permanently. But they didn't stop there. Yaga, the principal of Tokyo Jujutsu High, was executed because he'd supported Gojo, questioned orders, and stood in the way. Then they turned to the students. Yuta and Yuji, two young sorcerers who should have been allies, were turned against each other. The higher-ups didn't just oppose Gojo's vision for Jujutsu Society, they actively worked to destroy it. They exiled him, erasing his existence from their institution. But here's the thing about exile. You can't exile someone who decides to come home. When Gojo was unsealed, when he stepped out of the prison realm after months of isolation, the higher-ups realized their mistake. They'd created something worse than the threat they feared. And Gojo? He executed them, one by one. The same cold logic they'd used on Yuta, on Yuji, on Yaga, turned back on them. They had the power to save the world. Instead, they chose to protect their system. But of the special grades they tried to kill, one of them would live to 79 years old, and even become the head of the Gojo clan. Meet Yuta Okotsu, a special grade with cursed energy almost greater than Satoru Gojo's, and who would eventually grow to fill his shoes after Gojo's demise. But power alone doesn't make you loved. When Gojo found him, Yuta was barely human anymore, just a vessel for Rika's love turned monstrous. But Gojo saw something else. Potential. Before Gojo is sealed, he reminds Kenjaku of who beat up Suguru in the first place, reminding him that Yuta would do the same to Kenjaku, a statement to which Kenjaku laughs. However, by the Shinjuku Showdown arc, Yuta is able to kill Kenjaku after the distraction from Takaba. Being the third strongest character in JJK, a lot of burden is placed on Yuta. From being assigned to carry out Yuji's execution to copying Kenjaku's technique, Yuta never shirks from his responsibilities, showing up whenever his teammates need him. But here's what truly defines Yuta. When Satoru Gojo died, the man who'd believed in him when no one else did, Yuta didn't break. He took his mentor's body and used it in battle. Not out of disrespect, but loyalty. The same loyalty Gojo had shown him. Yuta honored that by fighting harder. He became what Gojo had always known he could be: a guardian, a protector, a leader, and the strongest of the special grades. But not every special grade used their power so wisely. One of them had everything and chose to lose it. Meet Megumi Fushiguro, a sorcerer with a technique so rare, so powerful that it only appears once every few hundred years. The 10 Shadows technique. When Gojo trained him, he said something that would define Megumi's entire life. Dying to win and winning even if you die are not the same thing. Megumi heard those words, but he never understood them. 400 years ago, a member of the Gojo clan with the 6 eyes and Limitless fought a member of the Zenin clan who possessed the 10 Shadows. Both were legends, both were unstoppable, and they killed each other. When Gojo told Megumi this story, he was making a point. You have the potential to match me, to surpass me, to be the strongest. Sukuna saw it too. The first time they met, when Sukuna awakened in Yuji's body, he looked at Megumi and smiled, knowing how much potential he had. Because Sukuna, who'd lived 1,000 years, who'd fought every sorcerer worth remembering, recognized something rare in Megumi. When Sukuna used his domain, he excluded Megumi, to protect Megumi, because Sukuna wanted that body intact. Even Toji, Megumi's father, saw it. When they met in Shibuya, when Toji's reanimated body stood before his son, Toji, who'd rejected the Zenin clan, who'd built his strength on nothing but his body, looked at his son and saw everything he could never be, and smiled. Because if Megumi had that much potential, maybe Toji's legacy wasn't a failure after all. Everyone saw Megumi's potential. Gojo, Sukuna, Toji, even Megumi himself. And Megumi? He saw a burden he never asked for. Everyone else saw his potential as a gift. Megumi saw it as proof he'd eventually fail them all. And that fear was why he kept summoning Mahoraga. When he fought the special grade finger bearer, when he overcame his mental constraints, he exorcised it. A special grade as a Year 2 student. In that moment, Megumi proved what he could do. So why is Megumi hated? Because every time he faced real danger, every time he had to choose between fighting and dying, he summoned Mahoraga. An untamed curse so powerful that summoning it guarantees one thing: death. Yours, your opponents, and everyone nearby. Against Haruta, a grade 1 sorcerer Nanami dispatched in seconds, Megumi summoned Mahoraga as his first choice, because to Megumi, dying together was easier than fighting alone. But somewhere deep inside, Megumi never believed he was worth his potential. And then Sukuna took over, accessed Megumi's potential. And Sukuna did what Megumi never could. Not only does he master the 10 Shadows technique, he tamed Mahoraga, refined the technique. He used this power to the fullest and won. That fight proved something heartbreaking. Megumi always had the power to be the strongest. He just never had the will to survive. Sukuna showed the world what Megumi could have been, if he just locked in. And that's why Megumi is hated, because he chose weakness. He had everything: potential, mentors, power, and he threw it away every time the world asked him to fight for himself. Some people are born with nothing and claw their way to survival. Megumi was born with everything, and never learned why it was worth keeping. But not everyone gets handed power. Some people are born without even the tools to survive. Meet Kokichi Muta, or as most knew him, Mekamaru. He was born with a heavenly restriction: unlimited cursed energy in exchange for a body that couldn't move, couldn't walk, couldn't live. Imagine being trapped, not in a cage, not in a prison, but in your own flesh. But unlike Megumi, who had everything and chose to give up, Kokichi had nothing and refused to stop fighting. He showed up, every day, every fight, every mission, through technology, through Mekamaru. Because Kokichi understood something Megumi never did: survival is worth fighting for. Then came his choice. Mahito and Geto offered him something he'd never had: a real body. All he had to do was betray the Jujutsu Society, tell them where Sukuna's fingers were hidden, give them the tools to destroy everything he'd fought to protect. And Kokichi agreed, because he was desperate enough to gamble everything for one moment of freedom. But he was betrayed. And when Kokichi discovered this, he didn't back down. He doubled down. Because even after the betrayal, Kokichi still believed survival was worth fighting for. Kokichi broke Mahito's domain, something even Nanami couldn't do. Pushed the curse to his limits, made him bleed. For a moment, just a moment, it looked like Kokichi might actually win. Then, Kokichi made a mistake. He saw Geto, the man who'd orchestrated the betrayal, and he attacked, lost focus, lost momentum, and Mahito didn't waste the opening. But even in defeat, Kokichi didn't stop. With his last moments of consciousness, he sent a message. To Yuji, to Meimei, to anyone who could listen, Kokichi betrayed Jujutsu Society, then saved it. Not because he was forgiven, but because even at the end, even when it cost him everything, Kokichi chose to fight rather than surrender. There's one more thing about Kokichi that makes him loved: Miwa. Through Mekamaru's eyes, he watched her and cared for her. Never able to tell her, touch her hand, or be real with her. When she learned what Kokichi had endured, the body he'd been trapped in, the betrayal he'd committed, the sacrifice he'd made, she wept because he'd fought so hard just to exist. That's why Kokichi is loved. He had every reason to give up, surrender, to summon his own version of Mahoraga. But he didn't, even when living hurt. Megumi was given everything and chose death. Kokichi was given nothing and chose life. But not every sorcerer values life. Haruta Shigemo saw them as nothing more than toys, a curse user who enjoyed hurting people. That's what defined Haruta. He only attacked those who couldn't fight back. But when Haruta faced someone who could actually fight back, someone who wasn't wounded, Haruta didn't fight bravely. He crumbled, begging, pleading. Haruta was cowardly, a predator who only attacked those who couldn't defend themselves. That's why everyone hates Haruta. But not every strong sorcerer is a coward. Some don't run from danger, some run towards it. Meet Todo, the loudest, strangest, and somehow one of the most honorable sorcerers in Jujutsu Kaisen. The kind of guy who'll ask your type the first time he meets you. Yeah, he'll act like an unhinged gym bro, but when it matters, Todo shows what real strength looks like. When he finds Yuji broken, lying on the ground, grieving Nanami, terrified he's lost Nobara, convinced he failed everyone, he doesn't mock him, he lifts him. He reminds Yuji that they are the exceptions, the ones who stand back up even when standing feels impossible. And then he fights beside him, against Mahito. He even loses a hand. And here's the thing about Todo that sets him apart. For all his talk about his type of woman, he treats every female sorcerer with genuine respect. He sees them as equals, as people worthy of standing beside him in battle. And that's why Todo Aoi is everything Naoya Zenin despises. Where Todo sees strength as something to recognize, Naoya sees it as something women are never allowed to have. Raised as the heir apparent to the Zenin clan, Naoya Zenin believed the world was already ordered, and that he sat at the top of it. Why? Because Naoya genuinely believes women are inferior. Not just weaker, inferior as human beings. When he looks at Maki, he doesn't see a skilled sorcerer. He sees a woman who dared to think she belonged in his world. Imagine someone with Gojo Satoru's arrogance, without the strength, the vision, or the responsibility to back it up. Naoya only respected one person in his entire family, Toji Fushiguro, because he was powerful and a man, even though Toji never acknowledged him. And then the unthinkable happens. The clan doesn't choose Naoya, they chose Megumi Fushiguro, someone younger, quieter, and everything Naoya despises. That decision shatters him. His ego fractures, his pride rots, and the man who believed he deserved everything becomes willing to kill for it. And in the end, Naoya Zenin isn't destroyed by heroes. He isn't destroyed by curses. He's destroyed by Maki Zenin, the woman he spent his entire life insisting was beneath him, the clan he worshipped, the hierarchy he believed protected him. All of it burns, and the person standing in the ashes is the one he never once considered his equal. We tried to place every character on the most loved versus most hated scale, but some characters refuse to fit. Sukuna destroyed half of Shibuya, and fans still love him. Toji abandoned his son and remains a fan favorite. So now we hand it over to you. Where do they belong?